Hey everyone, Jonathan and Molly here. Welcome to episode 5 of the Resistance Rundown, our weekly Star Wars show where we talk movie news, small screen news, books, and everything in between.
That's right.
Unsurprisingly, there's a little movie called The Last Jedi, rapidly approaching.
Yes, there is.
And we had a new TV spot drop,
Like an hour after we uploaded our last episode. It was really sad.
So really, in about 45 minutes, I'm expecting another TV spot.
Right. That would be quite unfortunate. However, in this new TV spot titled Awake, we did see several new things in the footage. We saw Luke in the Falcon for the first time.
Yes.
Really love a piece of dialogue that Supreme Leader Snoke had, which was "Darkness rises and light to meet it," which
Pretty great
was
line.
awesome. With that whole shot of his throne room as well.
Yep.
And then lastly, at the very end, a shot of Rey holding her lightsaber above Luke, it would appear.
At least that's what that's making you think is happening.
Yes. As with all footage in a trailer, this is what it looks like. Now we'll see what actually happens. But
some pretty cool shots.
Yeah.
Luke walking into the Falcon was a pretty spine-tingling moment, not gonna lie. The shot of Snoke's throne room is pretty fantastic.
Awesome.
The dialogue, the bit of dialogue is great. Rey looks amazing. Whether or not she's raising her lightsaber to Luke or to somebody else, who knows? But Daisy Ridley looks amazing in the footage. Really, the Luke and the Falcon thing is like the big takeaway. Only because this is something we really have not seen since Empire. Didn't even see it in Return of the Jedi.
Nope.
So.
That's so true. That was a big moment. Well, the funny thing is I wish, there have been several other TV spots that weren't really all that different from the original trailer that we got. And so I wish that we had known, how different this was going to be. I wish we had recorded our reactions for that 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Because he watched it before me, and he turned it, and I watched it, and Luke was in the Falcon, and I just went,
Yeah.
It was a very huge moment.
It's one of those moments that, I'm not pissed that they
Revealed it already.
Revealed it to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's one of those, it's not a earth-shattering moment, but it's a nice little, tidbit leading up.
Yes.
So.
Yes, looking forward to seeing it within the context of the film and what all is actually happening at that point in time.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Luke, let's go ahead and talk about some of Mark Hamill's comments. We all love Mark Hamill because he likes to make lots of comments to the press about what's going on. The first one is about his approach for portraying an older Luke. These were his comments to Disney Insider. And he said, "The biggest challenge for me was actually in the time between Return of the Jedi and Star Wars The Force Awakens. I had to know what had happened to Luke during those years. I had to glean decades of backstory from the script, and some of it I had to make up for myself. I had to know what he went through during that time. It's not important to the storyline for this film, but I did discuss some of my thoughts with Rian Johnson to make sure I wasn't coming up with anything in my personal backstory that would affect Luke's portrayal in this film." Hamill also recently disclosed that Luke was not going fully dark in the film, but is viewing the world differently due to his experiences. His comments there were, "In Star Wars The Force Awakens, Luke has lost confidence in his ability to make good choices. It haunts him to the core, but he hasn't gone to the dark side. This isn't an evil version of him, but it's still an incarnation of the character I never expected. It has pulled me out of my comfort zone. It's a real challenge." So, Jonathan, with that, are you glad to hear that Luke is not going dark? And how do you feel about still having gaps in Luke's storyline and kind of the comment that it's not going to matter in The Last Jedi where he's been?
Yeah, I think...
where all he's been.
I think it makes sense. I think they're probably intentionally leaving some room there for whether it's future films or I would like to think probably books or comics or some other kind of media that might be filling the gaps there. As far as him going, I never really thought that he was going full dark. I thought, they're definitely... I don't necessarily think the trailers are even leading you to believe that. I think they're insinuating that Luke has been through a lot of crap, and so you have a lot of this journey that's been difficult for him. And I think the stuff between him and Kylo is going to be great in the movie, even if it's just like some more like Force flashback type things. But you have to think that after everything Luke had gone through after the end of Return of the Jedi, training this new group of Jedi, having Kylo come in and, from what it looks like, practically kill him, at least in the footage. I mean, so like, there's just you would have to know that the headspace that he's in is not in the best place.
Yeah,
and I think that.
Which I think is why he goes seeking out the temple on Ahch-To anyway.
Yeah.
Because he needs some answers. He needs some reassurance. And I think between what all he's experienced and how that has changed his perspective on everything, including the Jedi, plus what he's learned on Ahch-To and maybe, what he was presented with versus what the original intention was. We don't know because we've never really gone that far back in film before. And we've never been here before. So I think this is really cool. I'm excited about Luke's transition. I think it is kind of the unexpected thing. But I'm glad they're not doing the whole dark thing just because he was already faced with that in the original trilogy and he chose not to. So, end of story. Yay, Luke. And then, I don't need all the answers in this film. I think more than likely through the comics and through the books, there's already been some of that through the comics especially. I just got in the Legends of Luke Skywalker, which I think is going to throw out some ideas of where all he's been, but it's all storytelling, so you don't really know what is real and what is not. So I think that's probably the best medium that they'll do, unless they decide to do a television series later on for those in between years, which is the only other option.
Yeah, and that could be a possibility, and personally one I wouldn't mind seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go, Lucasfilm. Something else we'd watch. Who knew?
That's right. Big shocker.
Well, speaking of fan theories, just for those of you who were still holding out that Finn is going to follow in the ways of the Force and possibly become a Jedi, John Boyega said, no, it's not happening as far as he's concerned, as far as he knows. And a lot of that was kind of due to the fact of, in Star Wars lore, there's normally one person who's going through that and one person alone. I think that's fair. And to be fair, I think they had fun teasing a Force-sensitive Finn in the previews for The Force Awakens, 2 years ago. But I think since then they've kind of shown that he doesn't actually understand it.
No, and I mean, I think even in the movie, it's not really insinuated that he's Force-sensitive. I mean, he uses a lightsaber, but other people have used lightsabers. It's not like you can only use it if you're a Jedi. And I think part of that was a misdirect to try to deflect from Rey.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, makes sense. I think Finn's character is going to be important going forward, but I don't see him as a as a Jedi. No,
and I don't even see him as a Force user necessarily either.
No.
In fact, one of the things I like about Finn is that I feel like he's the conduit for the audience. You know what I mean? Of like, what is this world? What are you talking about? Jedi are real. Like, the Force is real. He kind of played that role before. So, I kind of hope he kind of stays in that vein.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this is breaking news and something I'm incredibly excited about. And that is that Kathleen Kennedy confirmed on the Star Wars show that baby porgs are indeed a thing. Just so we're clear.
Yes.
Star Wars Newsnet also managed to reveal a shot of the baby porgs thanks to an early look at upcoming merchandise. Jonathan, what do you think of the cute little baby porgs?
Well, it's really funny because the merchandise, they basically just look like beach balls with mouths.
They're little balls.
Little furry beach balls. Obviously, if you're going to have a porg, why not have a baby porg?
Well, clearly.
Am I as excited as Molly is? No. But, that it's cute, I'm sure.
Hashtag
I'm sure we'll have
Pork Nation.
Yes. Yeah. You and Ash.
That's right.
Lead the charge.
That's me. They look like they're just going to be like rolling around everywhere. Like, I don't even think they're going to have feet. I just think they're going to like roll and be cute. So it's not actually as important as we all make it sound. I just like the porgs. So there you go.
That's right. You can catch Molly on her new podcast, Porg Nation.
Porg Nation.
Airing. No.
Not yet. Wait for
it. Give it some time.
Give it some time. We'll see. All right. Well, speaking of The Last Jedi, we had some theater terms for showing The Last Jedi be released this week. And wow. I think it kicks in at the $500 million mark domestically, supposedly, which we all know it's going to hit. So, like, within the first, 3 weeks. But anyway.
Probably, yeah.
regardless, once it does kick in, 65% of the revenue will be returned to Lucasfilm and Disney, and it has to have a minimum of 4 weeks in the large theaters, and if they pull it sooner, another 5% of the profit goes to Lucasfilm. So, Jonathan, is this overkill, or is this appropriate for what TLJ is going to be?
Well, this is one of those things that I think you could look at it one of two ways. You could look at it the fact that everybody is going to have this movie, and Lucasfilm and Disney know that, and therefore they can do whatever the heck they want. And then the other part of this is that, probably a little bit overkill, I think, but it also just means the theater is going to make more on concessions and everything that goes along with the experience. That being said, I mean, like, a lot of this stuff happens all the time. It just doesn't get
quite the attention.
Because,
or the press.
I mean, most movies are anywhere between the 50 to 55% margin all the time. So the 65% thing is, is not massively more than what they already get. The biggest thing is, staying in big theaters for 4 weeks. That's a little bit more interesting because there are other movies that will be coming out in the next month. Which, is not going to matter in like a 24 screen Cineplex, but most are not.
Theaters.
I mean, our theater I think is 16 screens, and like 6 of those are bigger screens, I think. Mm-hmm. So. For smaller to average theaters, it's going to be something. Yeah. But this is not the first time this has happened, even for Star Wars. If you go back and look at Phantom Menace and some of the prequels, almost 100% of the revenue went for like the first couple weeks for those films. So this is not anything new, particularly. Do I think other films will start doing the same thing? Probably. Yeah. Films that are going to be guaranteed to make bank, which is what exactly this film's going to do. Yeah. And even if you look at something like Thor Ragnarok, which just came out this past weekend, worldwide total, it's already almost at 500 million, and not domestically, but internationally. But you can expect Star Wars to be the same exact way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's funny to me. It's like it kicks in at 500 million mark domestically, and I'm like, okay, well, Rogue One made 500 million domestically, so like, I think The Last Jedi can eke it out, I
mean, 500 million domestically is half, roughly, of what The Force Awakens made domestically. Yeah. The Force Awakens is one of the very few films to pass the $1 billion mark on domestic alone. And I really, I'm not anticipating it to make quite as much as Force Awakens overall, but I think it's going to come probably close. Yeah.
No, I agree. And the thing is, at the end of the day, guys, it's Disney, it's Lucasfilm. They can make whatever demands they want because people are going to go see this. That's what it breaks down into.
It would be different if it was like, if Jigsaw was coming out and it was like, we're going to take 85% of the profits. It'd be like, okay, cool.
Which, I mean, to be fair, for some of these smaller theaters, you're going to want the movie and this is just me as a non-theater owner who does not have to make this decision, but just like, okay, well, if you can't keep it in the big theater for 4 weeks, then just eat the other 5%. You know what I mean? At that point, how much more is it really going to hurt you to take 30% versus 35%? It's already more than, or already less than what you would normally get anyway. So what's the point? Like I said, coming from a business owner, but not a theater owner. So take it for what you will. And our last story on The Last Jedi is that Kathleen Kennedy commented on the Star Wars show, not just about baby porgs, although clearly I was excited about that, but also about the future of the franchise and, of course, The Last Jedi. Kennedy already confirmed what we've been hearing all along, and that all the questions will not be answered in the new film, but that our legacy characters and our new characters will both be taken to new and unexpected places. In that same interview, she also revealed that they are currently working on outlining the next 10 years of Star Wars. She said, "We're sitting down now, we're talking about the next 10 years of Star Wars stories, and we're looking at narratively where that might go. Future stories beyond Episode 9 with these new characters, Rey, Poe, Finn, BB-8, but we're also looking at working with people that are interested in coming into the Star Wars world and taking us places that we haven't been yet. And that's exciting too because it's a vast galaxy far, far away, so the possibilities are endless. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on Kennedy's comments? And just for some fun, what are some films that you might want to see in this 10-year outline?
Well, it's interesting. I think I'm curious after 9 if they decide to kind of wrap up what we consider the trilogies.
Yeah.
It's not to say that they won't ever, come out with another one again. But I'm wondering if everything will kind of shift to more standalones or to other trilogies that are not
something different.
Skywalker sagas. As far as standalone films, I would like to see something that we haven't seen before. I would like to go back. I think the Old Republic days are very interesting.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think there's just a lot of stuff there that you could kind of pick and choose from what is now Legends, or just come up with something completely different. But I think that time frame is something that we haven't touched at all, really, particularly in the film or live action. And then, depending on what to do with these characters, I think you could almost have a Rey movie.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, quite frankly. But I would rather them almost do more of that kind of thing than having to go back and rehash stuff. I'm going to go watch Solo. I'll be there the day it comes out. But, I don't need a Yoda movie, particularly. I don't really need a Boba Fett movie.
Do you want Obi-Wan, though? Just so we're clear.
Yeah, Obi-Wan I'm interested in. But there's just a lot of things that I don't necessarily need. And I know that would be more of a guarantee. But it's one of those things. I think if you came out and did a Old Republic or some, like back whenever the Jedi and Sith were everywhere kind of story, people would be out in droves. It wouldn't matter if it was, particularly who you get for talent and particularly who you get it directed. That's just my feelings with it.
Yeah, no, I definitely want the Obi-Wan film that has been talked about at length. That is like the one out of our existing characters that I'm very much attached to and definitely want to see in their 10-year plan. I do like that she says stories. She refers to it as the next 10 years of Star Wars stories or whatever it is. So I think that's interesting because that's not just film. You know what I mean? I'll be really interested to see what they're going to do after Rebels goes off because it's already been, said that there is going to be something following that. Very intrigued about that. The other thing is, and as a book reader, I get super nerdy about this stuff sometimes, but Lost Stars is one of my favorite books that they've done. And that was Claudia Gray, and we've talked about it several times already, and we've only done 5 episodes of these things. But part of that is because they took a time period that we know, and they gave us a different perspective, and gave us new characters, and we had like cameos of like characters that we knew, not even like talking cameos, just like, oh, there's Princess Leia at this big affair that we know that she's going to be at because of her title, but we don't have any actual interaction with her. And I like that a lot, and so I would be very interested in that. I'm also really intrigued with all of the events going on after Return of the Jedi. Like, I love what they're doing with Battlefront, how we're going to kind of get that with Inferno Squad, and what the Empire's play is after the Emperor's gone. And then even the Aftermath series, like all that they go into there. Very interesting time when the whole universe is kind of in chaos. You know what I mean? To kind of delve into some individual stories, maybe people we don't necessarily know, who might emerge to play a small part in what's going on now. So
it's one of those things too. I've also been kind of curious about whether or not the Battlefront story and like Inferno Squad and some of that stuff isn't testing the waters for more stories like potentially. Because I mean, I just in the stuff, I have not played any of Battlefront 2, but just in the little bit that I've seen, if they come out with a Night in Versio movie, I would be down.
Yes.
Only because we've never really seen anything from the Imperial
only if
perspective.
you have Janine to play her. Like, she has to be her. Just so we're clear.
But I think it could be really interesting. Even if you were to center somewhere skew after Return of the Jedi, I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I think so as well. Oh, we have another news story, don't we?
Yep.
Shoot. All right. Hey, well, moving right along into a Star Wars story. listen, sometimes Molly covers up her notes and she can't see things.
Nothing but professionalism here, folks.
That's right, folks. Don't want to disappoint. Only one news story, and that's that Thandie Newton recently commented on her work on Solo, A Star Wars Story, and referred to it more as a collaboration. Her comments were very interesting, as in it made it sound like 90% of her work was completed with Lord and Miller, and even implied that there had been conversations between Lord and Miller and Ron Howard. So, Jonathan, what do you make of these remarks after last week kind of talking about reshooting, like, what was it, 80% of the film or whatever it was that we talked about?
Well, it's one of those things that I don't know how big a role Thandie has in the movie.
Yeah.
She could have been at the very beginning of the movie, and that could have been parts of it maybe that wasn't very different. We still have that 20% that hasn't been changed, and that could have been all of her section for all I know. Sure. I'm sure there would have had to have been some conversation between Lord and Miller and Howard at some point, whether they wanted to be had or not. But I just imagine. I don't think there's any bad blood between. I mean, it's not like
Howard like ousted them or anything.
So I don't imagine there's any hostility there, just because it's just the new guy on the job. But I think it's curious. I think more than anything, I think this maybe gives a hint of maybe how big her role is. Yeah. I think she may be more of a side character.
Well, yeah, I think that was we were kind of assuming based on that picture she had with a costume on that she's probably Imperial. Yeah. In some way.
So my guess is she's probably just not in the movie a ton. Yeah. If most of her stuff has not changed. Yeah. Or it could just been in a section that didn't need to be changed.
Yeah. It is interesting to me that she kind of made the comment that she didn't have to really reshoot all that much with her character. Yeah. And I think it's encouraging to hear that there were conversations between Lord and Miller and Howard. Because her comment was that it was an amazing collaboration. I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting outlook on that. So thanks, Thandie. So
definitely.
Anyway, that wraps up our movie news section today. Well, moving into the small screen, Star Wars Rebels returned again this Monday with another 2 episodes, one called Kindred and one called Crawler Commanders. So in these episodes, Ezra and the Ghost crew end up evading the Empire thanks to the Loth Wolves, and Hera returns to Yavin with some important information for the rebellion. So if you haven't watched the show yet and plan to do so, like normal, just skip ahead like 5 or 6 minutes and, don't let us spoil anything for you from these 2 episodes. So with that said, Jonathan, general thoughts on the episode, and what were some things that stuck out / might be important in the future? Because I feel like there was a lot of that in these 2 episodes.
Yeah, I think the first episode, Kindred, I think has probably been another one of my favorites of the series so far. Crawler Commanders was okay. I thought it was a little more of a filler kind of episode than the first one. It was
weird, right? Because what was happening with like Ezra and Kanan and them felt like a filler. But then in the meantime, you have stuff going on with Hera back on Yavin, and that's not filler. That is very much like the group needed to have a mission while she was gone to give her time to stoke the rebellion to action.
So, I thought the first Kindred, was a very strong episode.
It was.
Obviously the most interesting thing is the relationship of these Loth Wolves with the Force.
Yeah, man.
In the scene of them, going into this, trippy...
that is the most trippy I've ever seen
Star Wars bridge kind of thing.
I have no idea.
Where that's basically, they were walked to the other side of the planet in a matter of steps. So that's very interesting.
I was like, what is that?
Interstellar wolf tunnels,
some Harry Potter stuff right here.
Yeah. It got kind of trippy, which usually is like.
To be fair, but you know what though, there were some moments in Clone Wars that were like that to me.
Oh yeah,
like whenever Yoda goes off and meets the beings and finds out about being able to communicate with Qui-Gon and all that stuff. That's kind of what it reminded me of. I'm like, moments. Yes, this is the trippy stuff that Dave Filoni can pull off. For the record.
Yeah, we learn Kanan's
real name,
which is interesting. So
very interesting.
That part actually was a fantastic segment.
Yeah.
and then you kind of get into this whole thing. I'm curious where we go from here as far as what Jedi lore is happening on Lothal, because there's definitely, you're in these rock cave type stuff that mirrors the Jedi Temple on Lothal,
but it's not the temple. Very
so
strange.
it's kind of like it's a precursor kind of. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to get into this like almost with an Octu situation where you have like some original structures that aren't really structures. They're just, more earthy type things, not human built structures, but just making do. So like it's very interesting. I thought we might get a little bit more in Crawler Commanders, but it was kind of like, oh, here's a lot of this cool stuff, and we're gonna leave it right there.
You have to wait, yeah. Which, to be fair, also in episode 7 we got the introduction of Rook, Thrawn's assassin, who's voiced by Warwick Davis, and this dude is creepy and freaking awesome all at the same time. Like, the minute he starts running at them on all fours, I'm like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And Ezra even jokes about something creepy coming after them, and it made me chuckle, because I was like, that would be my reaction too. Like, yo, Kanan, you know how things normally go from like bad to worse?
Yeah.
This is happening right now. So that was a really cool thing in episode 7 too.
Well, then we also have the moment between Hera and Kanan that I feel everybody's been waiting on for however many seasons at this point. So we finally have a little bit of romance brewing for Hera and Kanan, or at least showing it.
Yeah. Been brewing for 4 freaking seasons, but
so there's basically. Although part of me was like, as soon as it happened, I thought, yep, one of them is going to die. Because that's certainly how.
And we all know Hera makes it, so we
know Hera makes it.
Okay, so let's be for real though. I feel like episode 7 was very much a calling to the fact that Kanan is probably biting the dust in this fall finale, right? And he might last until sometime in 2018, whatever. But I feel like this is like a confirmation that he's totally biting the dust. I rewatched those episodes today while I was finishing up notes and all that kind of stuff. And that beginning scene in episode 7 really started to get my attention. With the fact that he feels so called to Lothal and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, like some freaky Force stuff. And normally it just means that like you're being called back here for a reason and it's not good. Which, I mean, part of it, I think, is the wolves and all that kind of stuff. But other parts, I'm like, I feel like he's going to bite it on Lothal. That's the way it feels.
So
and then you finally have that moment with he and Hera, and I'm like, she says, may the Force be with you, and I feel like the Force is not going to be with whenever she gets back.
No,
because they're going to have that ground assault.
It will be with him, but just in a much more...
in his passing.
Yes.
He will become one with the Force.
A Force ghosty kind of way.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like there was a lot of stuff that was hinting at his soon-to-be demise, which makes me really sad, because I love Kanan a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's last season, so...
But, like, there has to be an ending that makes sense. Like, for him, because he doesn't pop up in episode 4. So, like, we're going to need some reason why he's not in A New Hope. And on that, can we just talk about how awesome Hera is? Like, pulling that Han Solo type move.
Yeah, that was... maybe one of my like just
favorite moments
of the episode.
Which, if you wanted a trailer, she does like light speed going through
like
one of the Imperial hangars, and that finally happened this episode, which I've kind of been waiting for because it was one of those moments in the trailer and gave me chills. Yeah, and that finally happened. But now that Solo did that in The Force Awakens, I'm kind of like, yes, she is.
Well, they're definitely
comparable in that way.
Hera's always been a great pilot, but they're definitely elevating some of that this season.
Yeah, definitely. And then lastly, another important thing that stood out, and that was in episode 8, was Protocol 13. Mon Mothma makes the comment whenever Hera is trying to rally the troops into going back to Lothal and doing their attack and stopping the TIE interceptors from being produced, is that Protocol 13 has happened, and they don't necessarily know why at that point, but they understand that it's an Imperial evacuation from a planet that has been occupied. Yeah. So I took that to be a shout out to Jeddah. That's how I took it.
That was my assumption.
My other thing, I feel like if the Rogue One event had happened by now, we would have that mention of the Battle of Scarif. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the only other option to me was that I'm sure a similar call came out for Alderaan before they blew Alderaan to pieces. But I feel like there should be a mention of Scarif in some way if it had already happened.
Yeah. What we don't know was Alderaan. It wasn't.
I don't know how occupied it was at that point in time.
Think
but there were
was,
Imperials.
I mean, there were some.
So
yeah.
unless I just blew them up
Although,
too. I don't know. Tarkin's pretty vicious
Tarkin
that way.
blew up quite a few in Scarif. So.
That's true. Yeah, I just assume it's Jeddah.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
That's what I'm saying. Which then I'm like, are we going to get news of that in the middle of them doing the Lothal stuff?
Well, this is the curious thing, though, is that I think...
Or is that going to be in the break in between?
It might be in the break, because I'm wondering, is because the Ghost is there.
Yeah.
In the Battle of Scarif, so... and they've already said, I'm pretty sure they're not doing the Battle of Scarif.
No, they're not doing the
series.
Battle of Scarif.
So I'm wondering is if you may be leading up to that...
And then you pick up in
and then
January
pick up, like,
with,
after everything's happened, and kind of the results of the Battle of Scarif.
Yeah.
Would be my guess, at least.
Yeah. That probably makes the most sense. Anything else you have? Thoughts on episodes?
I'm curious where they go. I'm curious for this next episode. There's a clip on StarWars.com's YouTube channel of next week's episode.
Yeah.
And I think it has some of the most beautiful shots they've done.
It's gorgeous.
Of some X-Wings coming in. It's gorgeous.
And
gorgeous
coming
animation.
into the airspace of Lothal and then being met by all these TIE fighters.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
And Hera's in an X-Wing.
That's right.
That's, can't get much cooler than that.
So the fourth season of Rebels picks back up on Monday, November 13th. Only one episode, and I kind of assumed it was going to be longer, but everything I'm reading is just a half hour.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the fall finale. And then we'll pick back up in 2018 with the rest of season 4. And so it's called Rebel Assault. And obviously we know that Hera is returning to Lothal for an attack with more of the Rebel fleet. And Kanan and Ezra and all the Ghost crew are going to be leading the ground assault.
Yeah.
So.
Should be a great episode.
Oh, it should be intense. Well, with that, we're going to move into our book discussion. It's going to be pretty short today, just because I started reading from a certain point of view. And guys, this book is like 400 and something pages. So while once upon a time I could have sat in a chair and read that long, we have a lot of work to do during the meantime. So that's not as possible as it used to be. I have gotten about a quarter of the way through the book so far. And it's very interesting because I know before that I had read about, the 40 short stories, blah, blah, blah. But what I didn't realize is that I think all of them are taking place in the events of A New Hope. For the 40th anniversary of A New Hope. 40, yeah, makes total sense. I just didn't catch on to all the details before that. And so, very interesting. There's only been one or two so far that I haven't really cared for. Like I said, I'm only about a fourth of the way in. I didn't really like the one for Aunt Beru, personally, but it was like, I don't know, I can't. Anyway, outside of that, I've enjoyed most of them. My favorite so far has probably been Gary Whitta's story, which is the first one in the book. It's called Ramus, and it's about one of the people on the Tantive 4 whenever Leia gets the plans to the Death Star. So that one's been incredible. There's also a really interesting one from Greedo's point of view. That was really neat about him being in the cantina, tracking down Solo and confronting him. Obviously we know what happens to him, but in that particular story there's this mention of a woman, and he calls her Unselta, but part of me is curious if that's going to play into Solo, a Star Wars story, because based on the comments in his little short story, she chose Han and she and Han didn't work out, and he really had feelings for her, and he is not pleased about the way Han has just moved on and been so Han Solo-ish, with his attitude. Yeah. So I'm especially interested in that just because I know we haven't gotten a lot of the names for the characters, and especially Emilia Clarke's character. We know that her name is Kira as of right now, but to me, Unselta sounds like a last name. So
yeah,
potentially it might be nothing. Might not be anything at all, but I felt like that might be something to look for in Han's story. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. It would be cool if they actually tie it in. So anyway, I am working my way through this one slowly but surely. Hopefully next week I'll be able to talk about a little bit more of the stories. But just for a rundown, my favorite so far, my least favorite so far, and then yeah. And then we did get the Legends of Luke Skywalker in.
Yep.
I haven't started it yet because my 400-page book is still sitting there. So that one will be next, though.
Well, next we normally talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the future theme park expansions at Disneyland and Hollywood Studios. It's been kind of quiet on this front for a little bit, but we're also approaching the holiday season, so some of that stuff kind of slows down in preparation for other things going on at Disneyland and Disney World. One thing that we've heard some whispers of online is kind of what the potential future of Star Tours could be. As you know, it's Star Tours is close to where Star Wars Land is, but there's still quite a bit of space between the two, and it's not going to be combined into that new world. So all the people have been kind of questioning what its eventual fate will be. Personally, it's one of my favorites, so I would like it just to stay where it's at. But I know logistically, it doesn't make sense probably to have a Star Wars presence outside of what is the actual Star Wars world.
Yeah, probably
quote
not.
Unquote. So I think it's safe for now, but I would, in the next 5 years, I think anticipate it probably going to something else.
Yeah.
And I think the Millennium Falcon ride is probably going to be a kind of hybrid between a simulator and that kind of thing. So it may scratch the itch, so to speak, of what Star Tours does currently.
That's true.
So that's always a possibility. But we'll know more about that when we hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that leads us into today in Star Wars History 101. This one's kind of a fun one. November 8th, 2012, the classic mobile game Angry Birds Star Wars is released. And it's kind of hard to believe this has been 5 years ago.
We still have it on a device somewhere.
Definitely still have it, yeah. I don't play it very much anymore, but for a while there, Angry Birds was
Angry Birds was
thing.
the game.
Yeah.
Not now, but it was.
No,
It's okay. They made plenty of money while it was that way.
Indeed they did. So just a little bit of fun trivia there for you. And that pretty much does it for episode 5 of the Resistance Rundown.
That's right.
Thanks to all of y'all for checking us out. If you like this video, subscribe down below, give us a like, send us a comment, let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see in the Star Wars universe. If you'd like more general movie news, you can check out the Shot List, our movie podcast. I'll include the link below. You can also check out our movie reviews on Twitter and Instagram at ATL_movies or on AboveTheLineMovies.com. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeachJD.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MCBeach.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye,
Bye, guys.